My brother removed my name from his wedding
I'm
guest
sorry.
list because
You
he
said my
said I didn't
reservation
fit
wasn't
the
found?
image he was trying to build. I was 32,
I told them
single,
300
and
guests,
according
not
to him,
2.
still playing with property records for a
I'm
living.
checking the list, sir.
So I stood
She's gonna
outside the
notice.
ballroom in my
I
navy
believe there's
dress,
been a mistake.
holding the
Just a
envelope that
moment,
would
let me
cost
check
him the
again.
$2.6 million lake house.
Oh dear,
He had
I'm
already
so
started calling
sorry.
his future.
No,
My brother
no,
removed my name from his wedding guest list because he said I didn't
no.
fit the image
That
he was
can't be
trying to
true.
build. I was
You shouldn't have
32
done
years
that.
old, single, and according to Marcus,
I
still
have
playing with
proof.
property records for a living.
Let's just talk.
He said that once at Thanksgiving with a laugh, like it was harmless, like my job was a hobby and not the reason half his life hadn't fallen apart years ago. But that Saturday evening, standing outside the ballroom of the Charleston Grand Hotel in a navy dress I had ironed twice, I finally understood he hadn't been joking. He had been telling the truth the whole time. The hotel lobby smelled like white roses, expensive perfume, and polished marble. A string quartet played somewhere beyond the gold-trimmed doors. Guests moved past me in silk gowns and black tuxedos, laughing softly, holding champagne flutes like they had practiced being rich in front of mirrors for weeks. Marcus had been telling Olivia's family that after the wedding, they would probably settle at Bennett Lake House. He never said my name was tied to it. He never said I was the one who had saved it, repaired it, and kept the taxes paid when everyone else called it a burden. I smoothed my dress with both hands. It wasn't designer. It wasn't new. But it was clean, modest, and the same color my father once said made me look calm even when the world wasn't. Name, please. The young woman at the check-in table asked. She wore a headset and held an iPad against her chest. Behind her, a seating chart stood on an easel, covered in cream cards, and world wasn't. Name. Please, the young woman at the check-in table asked. She wore a headset and held an iPad against her chest. Behind her, a seating chart stood tiny gold lettering. Claire Bennett. I said. I'm the groom's sister. Her smile stayed in place for 1 second too long. Then she looked down. She typed, scrolled, tapped again. I'm sorry, she said carefully. Could you spell that I did? Claire Bennett. She searched again. The smile faded. I'm so sorry, Miss Bennett. I don't see your name on the guest list. At first, I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because my mind was trying to protect me from what my heart already knew. That can't be right, I said, pulling out my phone. I RSVP'd 2 months ago. I have the confirmation email. She glanced at the screen when I showed her, then called over a woman in a black dress with a clipboard. The wedding coordinator looked at my phone, then at her list. Her face changed. Not shocked, not confused, guilty. Would you mind stepping to the side for a moment? She asked softly. That was when my stomach dropped. I stepped away from the table while guests continued walking past me into my brother's wedding. A cousin I hadn't seen in 3 years looked right at me, then quickly looked away, pretending not to recognize me. I called Marcus. He answered on the 4th ring. Claire. His voice was tight. Where are you? At the check-in table, I said. They can't find my name. Silence. Behind him, I could hear men laughing, glasses clinking, someone telling him it was almost time. Then Marcus exhaled. Claire, please don't make this dramatic. My hand tightened around the phone. Dramatic, I said. I'm standing outside your wedding. This night is important, he whispered. Olivia's family is here. Her father's partners are here. I need everything to look right. For a moment, I couldn't speak. Then I asked, Are you saying I don't look right? He didn't answer, And sometimes silence is crueler than words. Finally, he said, this just isn't your kind of room. I looked through the open ballroom doors at the chandeliers, the flowers, the people my brother had chosen over me. Then I reached into my purse and touched the cream envelope I had brought for him. What Marcus didn't know was that inside that envelope was the future he had already started calling his own. Marcus hadn't always been ashamed of me. When we were kids, he used to hold my hand crossing the street, even when I told him I was old enough to walk by myself. He was 4 years older, which meant in his mind, he was half brother, half bodyguard, and half unpaid legal guardian. Yes. Marcus always believed he could be more than one thing at once. After Dad died, that changed. I was 21 then. Marcus had just started his first sales job in Charlotte and was determined to become the kind of man who wore fitted suits and said words like leverage and network without laughing. Mom fell apart quietly. Bills piled up. Insurance forms came in the mail. The small house Dad left behind had an old mortgage, 2 tax issues, and a lien no one in our family even understood. Marcus said he was too busy. So I learned. I learned how to read county records. I learned what a title defect was. I learned how a wrong signature from 15 years ago could stop a sale cold. I learned which office to call, which form to file, which clerk still answered the phone after 3. By the time most girls my age were figuring out graduate school or dating apps, I was sitting in courthouse basements reading deed books that smelled like dust and wet cardboard. That was how I ended up in property records. Not because I had no ambition, because someone had to keep our family from losing what little we had left. Marcus never saw it that way. To him, I was the sister who stayed behind, the one who drove an 8-year-old Honda, the one who knew notaries by first name, the one who wore flats to work because some days I had to walk from the county office to the bank to the attorney's building before lunch. At family dinners, he turned my job into a joke. Claire knows where rich people sign papers, he once said, grinning across the Thanksgiving table. That doesn't mean she's one of them. Everyone laughed. Even Mom smiled. The embarrassed kind of smile people use when they hope a joke doesn't become a fight. I smiled too. That was my mistake. Because when you laugh along with people who are belittling you, they start believing you agree. What Marcus didn't know was that those same property records had changed my life. 6 years earlier, while cleaning up one of Dad's old files, I found paperwork tied to my grandmother's lake house outside Somerville. Everyone thought the place was nearly worthless. It had roof damage, outdated wiring, unpaid taxes, and 3 relatives who wanted quick cash more than they wanted memories. I saw something different. Clean title, lake access, no flood claim history. A road expansion planned less than 2 miles away, so I bought out 2 cousins slowly. Then a third. I worked overtime, took ugly side jobs, skipped vacations, repaired 1 room at a time, refinished floors with my own hands until my knees bruised, fought with contractors, learned rental laws, built an LLC because a closing attorney told me I needed to protect myself. 6 years later, Bennett Lake House was appraised at $2.6 million. Marcus never asked how I was doing. He only asked 2 months before his wedding whether the old lake place might be available after he and Olivia got married. He said it casually, like he was asking to borrow a cooler. I didn't tell him no. I called my attorney instead. Because despite every joke, every little cut, every time Marcus made me feel small in rooms where he wanted to look big, I still thought he was my brother. and I had planned to give him a chance at that house. Not as a gift, as a 5-year lease-to-buy agreement at a price no stranger would ever get. I thought I was giving Marcus a future. I didn't realize he was already deciding I didn't belong in his. The first sign came 6 months before the wedding. Olivia posted a photo of her engagement ring on Instagram, and underneath it, Marcus wrote, "Can't wait to build our future with the woman who changed my life." I liked the photo before I realized no one had called me. Not Marcus, not Mom, not even Aunt Diane, who usually knew family news before the people living it. I found out about my brother's engagement the same way one of his old co-workers did, through a perfect square photo with a champagne glass in the background. When I called him, he sounded distracted. "Claire, it just happened so fast." He said, "We were going to tell you." I wanted to believe him. That was another mistake. A week later, Mom accidentally forwarded me a screenshot from the wedding planning group chat. There were messages from Olivia, Marcus, Mom, Olivia's mother, 2 bridesmaids, and 3 cousins. My name wasn't there. When I asked Mom about it, she sighed like I had created a problem by noticing one. "Honey, Olivia's family is handling most of it. You know how formal they are. I don't think you'd enjoy all those conversations anyway." Formal, that became the word everyone used when they meant expensive. The rehearsal dinner was formal. The bridal luncheon was formal. The welcome cocktails were formal. The family photos were formal enough that Marcus suggested I not stress myself out by coming early. Then the seating changed. At first, I was supposed to sit with Mom, Aunt Diane, and the rest of the immediate family. Then Marcus texted me one night, "Olivia's parents are doing a blended family table. You'll probably be with cousins. Hope that's okay." It wasn't okay. But I wrote back, "Sure," because that was what I always did. I made things easy. I made myself easy. 2 weeks before the wedding, I noticed my name wasn't on the family photo schedule Olivia emailed by accident. There were photos for the bride's family, the groom's family, grandparents, cousins, college friends, even important professional guests. There was no sister of the groom. When I asked Marcus, he laughed it off. "Claire, you hate photos. I don't hate being included," I said. He got quiet. Then he said, "Don't start this right now." That sentence told me more than he meant it to. Because I had helped Marcus through things Olivia's family would never know. I loaned him money when he lost his job and told Mom he was between opportunities. I helped clean up his credit report when one old account almost cost him his first apartment. I read the contract for his first investment pitch because he didn't understand half the language and was too proud to admit it. Once, when a medical bill went to collections, I paid it before it damaged him worse. He never brought that up at Thanksgiving. He only brought up my old Honda. He only brought up my job. He only brought up the parts of me that made him feel taller. By the week of the wedding, I could feel myself being moved farther and farther away from the center of his life. Not with one cruel act, but with 100 polite adjustments. A missing group chat, a changed table, a forgotten photo, a joke that wasn't a joke. And finally, that night at the Charleston Grand Hotel, the coordinator asked me to wait near the lobby plants while she figured things out. That was when I understood. Marcus hadn't forgotten me. He had edited me out. I stood near the lobby plants for almost 3 minutes, watching the wedding coordinator pretend to check her clipboard. She already knew. I already knew. Everyone around us probably knew too. In that quiet way, people understand embarrassment before anyone says it out loud. Through the ballroom doors, I could see the world Marcus had chosen. White roses climbed the walls. Gold chairs surrounded tables dressed in cream linen. A massive chandelier hung over the dance floor like a frozen sun. My brother was somewhere inside that beautiful room, preparing to marry a woman whose family he wanted to impress more than he wanted to tell the truth. I called him again. This time, he answered faster. "Claire," he whispered sharply. "I told you I can't do this right now." "No." I said, "You told me not to make it dramatic. I'm asking a simple question." He didn't answer. I looked at the check-in table, at the guest list glowing on the iPad, at the young woman who kept her eyes down because she knew this was not a mistake. "Did you remove my name?" On the other end of the phone, Marcus breathed through his nose. Then he said, "Claire, you need to understand the situation." My chest went cold. "That's not an answer. It is complicated." "No," I said, "it's cruel. Did you remove my name?" A long pause. Then, finally, my brother said, "Yes." One word. That was all it took to split my life into before and after. I closed my eyes for half a second, behind Marcus. Someone laughed. A groomsman. Maybe. Someone with a drink in his hand. And no idea that my brother had just burned down the last safe place between us. Why I asked? He sounded tired, almost annoyed, like I was forcing him to explain something obvious, because Olivia's family doesn't understand our side of things. He said, "They're polished, Claire. They're connected. Her father has partners here tonight. There are people in that room who could change my future, and I would ruin that I didn't say ruin. You didn't have to." He lowered his voice even more. "I just didn't want awkward questions." "About what?" "About the old house, about Dad, about your job, about why you're still doing county paperwork at 32, about things that don't fit tonight." There it was, not hidden behind jokes, not softened by family dinner laughter. The truth, clean and ugly. I wasn't his sister tonight. I was a loose thread in the suit he was trying to wear. I looked down at my purse. Inside was the cream envelope I had prepared for him. The original version had a letter congratulating him and Olivia. It had the first draft of a 5-year lease-to-buy agreement for Bennett Lake House, a price so far below market that my attorney had called it generous to the point of reckless. I had planned to give Marcus a way into the home he kept calling his future, not because he deserved it, because I still loved him. My attorney, Alden Pierce, had warned me 2 days earlier, "Claire, until he signs, this is only an offer. You can withdraw it at any time." At the time, I thought that was just legal language. Now it sounded like mercy. I opened my eyes. Did Mom know I asked? Marcus didn't answer quickly enough. That was answer enough. I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. "I understand now," I said. He exhaled like he was relieved. "Good. We'll talk after the honeymoon. Maybe we can—" I hung up. Then I walked back to the check-in table. The coordinator straightened when she saw me coming. "Miss Bennett, I'm so sorry. We're still trying to—" "You don't have to," I said. My voice was calm. So calm, it almost didn't sound like mine. I took the cream envelope from my purse. On the front, in black ink, it already said, "For Marcus and Olivia." I borrowed the receptionist's pen and added one line beneath it. "Open before the first toast." Then I handed it to the coordinator. "Please make sure my brother gets this." I said, "It's his wedding gift." She took it carefully, as if paper could be dangerous. And sometimes it can. I turned away from the ballroom, from the flowers, from the gold chairs, from the family table where my seat had been quietly erased. Then I walked out of my brother's wedding before anyone inside realized I had just taken back the most valuable thing in his future. I didn't go home right away. That surprised me. The old Claire would have driven straight back to my apartment, taken off the navy dress, folded it over a chair, and sat in the dark replaying every word until it hurt twice. But that night, I walked 3 blocks to a little Italian restaurant tucked between a florist and a shoe repair shop. The kind of place Marcus would have called cute, in the same voice he used for things he thought were beneath him. I asked for a table for one. The hostess didn't look at me with pity. She didn't ask if someone else was coming. She just smiled and led me to a small table near the window. For the first time that evening, someone gave me a place without making me prove I belonged there. I ordered pasta, a glass of red wine, and turned my phone face down. At the Charleston Grand Hotel, the ceremony would be ending. Olivia would be smiling for photos. Marcus would be shaking hands with men he hoped would open doors for him. My mother would be telling relatives I was probably running late or had misunderstood the schedule. Then the reception would begin, and eventually, someone would hand Marcus the envelope. I pictured him opening it with that half-smile he wore when he expected people to admire him. Maybe he thought it was a check, maybe a sentimental letter, maybe an apology. Instead, he found the appraisal first. Bennett Lake House, current, estimated market value $2.6 million. Then the ownership summary. Bennett Oaks, LLC. Managing member Claire Bennett. Then the draft agreement. The one my attorney had prepared so Marcus and Olivia could lease the house for 5 years, with an option to buy at a price nearly $700,000 below market value. Tucked behind the agreement was the one-page notice Alden had prepared for me. Notice of withdrawal of lease-to-buy offer, signed by me that morning, dated before the ceremony. Perfectly legal, painfully final. I knew the moment Marcus reached the final letter because my phone began to move. It buzzed once, then again, then again. I let it sit there, vibrating against the white tablecloth while the waiter placed my pasta in front of me. "Everything all right?" he asked. I looked at the phone. Marcus. Mom. Marcus again. A number I didn't recognize. Then Olivia. "Everything's fine," I said. And strangely, it was back inside that ballroom. The truth was spreading slowly, not like an explosion, but like cold water across marble. Marcus had told Olivia's family the lake house was basically ours. He had let them believe it was part of his foundation, proof that he wasn't just marrying into money, but bringing something solid of his own. Then Olivia's father, Richard Monroe, saw Alden Pierce's letterhead. I learned later from Aunt Diane that his expression changed before Marcus even finished reading. "Alden Pierce represents your sister," he asked. Marcus had no answer. Then Helen Crowley, a local banker seated 2 tables away, leaned over and said, "Claire Bennett owns Bennett Lake. I handled part of that refinance." Marcus's face didn't change all at once. First, the smile disappeared. Then the color drained from his cheeks. Then he looked across the room. Not for me, but for a way out. The laughter at the head table thinned into whispers. Someone lowered a champagne glass without taking a sip. Olivia's mother reached for the appraisal, but Olivia took it first. That was when Olivia stopped smiling. She looked at Marcus and said, quietly enough that only half the table heard, "You told me that house was yours." My phone buzzed again. This time, Marcus left a voicemail. I didn't play it. I already knew what he wanted. He didn't want his sister back. He wanted the house. By the time I finished dinner, my phone had 43 missed calls. Marcus called 17 times. Mom called 12. Olivia called 4. The rest came from numbers I didn't recognize, which told me Marcus had already started borrowing phones the way people do when they believe persistence is the same thing as love. I sat in my car outside the restaurant and listened to the first voicemail. Marcus's voice came through sharp and breathless. Claire, what is this? What did you do? You can't just withdraw something like this on my wedding night. I deleted it. The second message was from Mom. Claire Marie Bennett. You answer your phone right now. Your brother is humiliated. Olivia's family is asking questions. This is not how family behaves. I almost laughed at that, not because it was funny, because she had watched my name disappear from my own brother's wedding and still thought I was the one who had broken the family. The third message was Marcus again, but his anger had started to crack. Please, call me. Richard is asking about the house. Olivia thinks I lied to her. I need to explain this before the toast. There it was. Not, I hurt you. Not, I'm sorry. Just, I need to explain this. I turned the phone off and drove home through the quiet Charleston streets. The next morning, Marcus was waiting outside my apartment building. He was still in yesterday's suit. His tie was gone. His hair looked like he had run his hands through it all night. For a second, I remembered the brother who used to wait for me after school when thunderstorms scared me. Then he opened his mouth. You knew how much that house meant to me. I stopped on the sidewalk. No, I said. I knew how much it meant to me. You only knew what it could make you look like. His face tightened. That's not fair. Neither was removing me from your wedding. He looked away. Olivia's family is different. Claire, you don't understand the pressure. Her father has expectations. Those people notice everything. They noticed you lied. I didn't lie. You told them Bennett Lake House was basically yours. His silence answered for him. Then he softened his voice, the way he used to when he wanted money but didn't want to ask directly. Can we still fix the agreement? I stared at him, not because I was surprised, because I wasn't. The agreement was never signed. I said, it was an offer. But you promised, I planned, I corrected. There's a difference. Claire, if I lose that house, Olivia will never trust me again. I stepped closer, just enough that he had to look at me. Then maybe you should tell her the truth. His eyes dropped. For the first time, Marcus didn't look polished. He looked small. I was embarrassed. He whispered. Of me, he swallowed. Of where we came from. That hurt more than I expected. Because I had spent years protecting the parts of our family he wanted to bury. Dad's debts, Mom's panic, his credit problems, the old house, the ugly paperwork, the things that didn't look good under chandeliers. And he had repaid me by pretending I was part of the mess. You didn't come here for your sister. I said. You came here for the house. He opened his mouth, but no words came out. I walked past him toward the building. Behind me, Marcus said. So that's it. I turned back once. No, I said. That's the first honest thing that's happened between us in years. Mom called the family meeting 2 days later. She didn't ask if I wanted one. She announced it in a text message with too many capital letters and not enough self-awareness. Sunday, 4 p. My house. We are fixing this. I almost didn't go. Then Aunt Diane called. Come, she said. Not because they deserve an explanation. Come because they've been telling the story without you in the room. So I went, but I didn't go alone. At 3:58, I walked into Mom's living room with Alden Pierce beside me, wearing a gray suit and carrying one thin leather folder. The room went silent. Marcus stood by the fireplace. Olivia sat on the couch with her arms folded tightly across her chest. Mom hovered near the coffee table, like if she arranged enough napkins. The family might become respectable again. Aunt Diane sat in the corner, watching everything. Mom saw Alden and frowned. "Claire, why did you bring a lawyer?" I set my purse on the chair. "Because every time I come alone, people call it a misunderstanding." Marcus looked exhausted. "Claire, this doesn't need to become legal. It became legal when you started speaking about my property like it belonged to you." Olivia's face changed at the word "my." Mom stepped between us. "Enough. You two are brother and sister. Marcus made a mistake, and you embarrassed him on his wedding night." I looked at her for a long moment. "Mom." He removed my name from his guest list. She waved her hand. It was a stressful day. Alden opened his folder. "No, Mrs. Bennett," he said calmly. It was a documented decision. He placed 3 printed pages on the coffee table. The first was my RSVP confirmation. The second was the updated seating chart with my name removed from the family table. The third was an email from the wedding coordinator confirming Marcus had requested that I be removed from guest check-in entirely. Olivia picked up the page before Marcus could stop her. Her eyes moved across the words. Then she looked at him. "You told me Claire decided not to come." Marcus closed his eyes. Mom reached for the paper like she could make the truth smaller by turning it face down. "We don't need to pass documents around like this," she said. "This is still a family matter." Aunt Diane's voice cut through the room. "Linda, leave the paper where it is." Mom froze. For the first time that afternoon, she looked less angry at me and more afraid of what Marcus had actually done. For once, she sounded surprised by him, not disappointed in me. He rubbed his face with both hands. I was trying to keep the night simple. Aunt Diane finally spoke. "No, Marcus. You were trying to look richer than you are." The room went still. Marcus turned toward her. "That's not fair." "What's not fair?" Aunt Diane said, "is letting your sister clean up this family's mess for years, then hiding her when the room got expensive." Nobody answered. Because everyone knew she was right. Olivia stood up slowly. "I don't care about the house as much as I care that you lied to me," she said to Marcus. "You let my father believe it was yours." "I thought it would be," Marcus said. I shook my head. "No. You thought I would be." His face tightened. I looked around the room at my mother, who had stayed quiet when my name disappeared, at my brother, who had traded loyalty for image, at Olivia, who was finally seeing the man behind the suit. Then I said what I came to say. Bennett Lake House is no longer available to Marcus. Not for lease, not for purchase, not through family discount, not through guilt. Mom's eyes filled. "Claire, don't do this. I'm not doing anything to him," I said. "I'm stopping myself from doing more for someone who was ashamed to claim me." Alden placed one final page on the table. "This is a letter of intent," he said. "Claire is entering negotiations with Second Harbor House, a local nonprofit. The property will be used as a retreat for women rebuilding their lives after divorce, loss, or displacement." Marcus stared at the paper like it had slapped him. "You're giving strangers my future." "No," I said quietly. "I'm giving the house to people who won't be embarrassed to walk through the front door." For the first time, Marcus had no polished answer. He just looked at me like I had destroyed his life. But all I had done was stop funding the version of him that never respected mine. 3 months after Marcus's wedding, I stood on the back porch of Bennett Lake House and watched the morning fog lift off the water. For 6 years, that house had been my secret. Not because I was ashamed of it, but because I wanted one thing in my life that didn't have to be explained, defended, or measured against Marcus's version of success. The porch boards were the same ones I had sanded myself during a July so hot my shirt stuck to my back before 9 in the morning. The blue shutters were the same ones I had repainted after a contractor told me nobody would notice if we left them chipped. I noticed. I had always noticed the things other people dismissed. That was probably why the house survived. Second Harbor House signed the final agreement on a Friday afternoon. It wasn't a dramatic donation, and it wasn't some impulsive act of revenge. I kept ownership through Bennett Oaks, LLC, but the nonprofit received a long-term lease at a rate low enough to let them actually do their work. Part of the rental income covered taxes, insurance, and maintenance. Another part went into a small fund for women who needed temporary housing, legal help, or simply a safe place to breathe. Alden called it practical generosity. I called it peace. The first guests arrived 2 weeks later. There were 4 women that weekend. One had just left a 20-year marriage. One had lost her husband and didn't know how to be alone in her own kitchen yet. One was starting over after losing her apartment. The fourth barely spoke at first, but on Sunday morning, I saw her sitting by the lake with a mug of coffee in both hands, looking at the water like it had given her permission to rest. That was when I knew I had made the right choice. Marcus texted less after that. At first, his messages were angry, then desperate, then quiet. 1 month after the agreement was signed, he mailed me a letter. No demands, no mention of the house, no request to reconsider. Just one sentence near the end that made me sit down before I finished reading. I didn't just remove your name from a guest list. I removed your place in my life because I was ashamed of where we came from. I folded the letter and put it in my desk drawer. I didn't forgive him that day, but I believed, for the first time, that he had finally told the truth. Olivia stayed with him, at least as far as I knew. Their honeymoon happened eventually, though not in Europe like they had planned. Mom called less often, but when she did, her voice had changed. Softer, more careful. Aunt Diane visited the lake house twice and brought lemon bars both times. "You know," she said once, standing beside me on the porch, "your father would have loved this." I looked out at the water. "I hope so." "He would," she said. "Not because of the money, because you made something useful out of what everyone else ignored. That stayed with me. Because that was the real story of Bennett Lake House. It was never about a $2.6 million appraisal. It was never about Marcus losing something he had no right to claim. Marcus removed my name from one list. In doing so, he removed his own name from the future I had almost handed him. But more than anything, it was about finally understanding that my value didn't become real when other people discovered what I owned. It had been real when I was reading dusty records in county offices. It had been real when I was fixing floors alone. It had been real when I was standing outside my brother's wedding in a navy dress, being told I didn't belong. Marcus thought a guest list could decide who deserved a seat in the room. But I learned something better. The right people don't wait until they know what you own to save you a seat.